This is video 4 of 4 that I did August 8th, 2019 of Powell Valley. We're coming down Highway 63 on our way to La Follette, and this is video 4 of 4. We'll end at the post office in La Follette. Rather than to repeat a lot of things that I've said on the other videos, it's kind of hard to jabber for an hour and a half without repeating yourself, so I'll just tell you a war story about the Air Force. I was 17 when I joined the United States Air Force, and I was sent to West Palm Beach, Florida. And I was assigned to the Data Processing Center. And what I'm going to tell you is like comparing a Model T to the most sophisticated thing you can think of. You talk about being back in the dry years of telemetry. This is. We had a squadron of RB-50s. The RB-50 looked like a B-29. Unless you really knew the difference, you would think it was a B-29, but it was an RB-50. What they would do is they would take that RB-50, and at that time they called it low-ran and high-ran. The Navy used it for navigation. And they would fly a specific route, and they had instruments on board that would measure, I don't know how many seconds between each photograph, but what they were doing is they were photographing the instruments showing the high-ran and low-ran. I may not be pronouncing it exactly the way some people do, but if you know old technology, you know what I'm talking about. And they would have a 35 millimeter camera take photographs. And then they would bring it back to us, and the best way I can describe it is if you go to the library and you get some microfilm, or they used to call it microfiche when you go into a parts store to buy a part, but it was similar to that, but much more, not more sophisticated, but it gave you a different image. And when the RB-50s came back, they would develop the 35 millimeter film, and then they would send it over to us, and two people would get together, and you would call out the instrument readings to the other person, and he'd write them down. And then once we had all the data from the film, we would get together, and we had computers, but they really weren't computers. They were math machines, and they were mechanical. They had a kill switch on some of them. We had some earlier models before they had placed a kill switch on it. They were electrically operated, but to describe how those old computers worked, and they were mechanical, you could add, subtract, and divide. I'm forgetting whether we could do yes, we could do multiplication with it. But anyway, if you didn't have a kill switch on it and you had it plugged in, and you divided 1 into 1,000,000, it would try to give you an answer, which you know what the answer would be, and it would sit there and go, you'd have to unplug it. But we'd take the readings that we had gotten from that 35 millimeter film. Now, this was in 1956. And we would compute that data, and that was the first telemetry for guided missiles. And back then, the missiles looked like airplanes. They would fire them with a JADO bottle. And I've had on my Facebook page a few times, I worked in the admin portion when, now this was like in 1959. It's 56 when I was in West Palm Beach. Then I went to Orlando, and I worked in the admin section, and I did, at least 80% of the admin work for a squadron that had a MACE missile, and they moved overseas. And I worked almost 24/7, and my desk was right by a window, and just about everybody on the base, the movers and shakers, all the first sergeants and everybody like that, they would go by there and they would see me working just about all the time. It even got to the point when they'd see me on the street, they'd say, you're doing a lot of work, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, it's, I am. So anyway, I completed the paperwork, and one day I was sitting at my desk, and this full bird colonel came in. And my desk was near the front door. I have a photograph. Well, that's a different social media. I keep my Facebook account and my YouTube account totally separate. So anyway, I was sitting there, and this full bird colonel came in, and he said, I'm looking, and he mentioned my name, And I said, that's me, sir. And he said, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you did getting our admin portion together on our move. And he said, we're going to test fire from a launch pad, a mobile launch pad, the MACE missile. It'll be the first one that's launched. And we're going to launch it from Cape Canaveral. And I'd like for you to be my personal guest to witness it. And he said, you need to check with your officer in charge, see if it's all right for you to go, and he'll have to issue an order or write what they called a DF. I forget what, it's an acronym. I forget all these acronyms we used. So I went in, and he was a captain, and I told him, I said, the colonel, who's a squadron commander of the missile squadron, he's wanting me to join him over at Cape Canaveral. They're going to test fire one of their missiles, and he wants me to be a guest. And so my captain said, well, he said, you don't think I'd prevent you from going, do you? I said, no, but I just wanted to go through protocols until it would be okay. And he said, no problem. He said, I'll give you a written order right now, telling you that you have my permission. So I went with the squadron, and I spent the day over there with them. And while I was there, this was in October 59. I got out of the Air Force the first time the 8th or 9th of January 60. But anyway, while we were there, it was Cape Canaveral then. While we were there, it was either a Atlas or a Titan. I'm thinking it was a Titan. It was one of the first Titans that they ever launched from Cape Canaveral. And we were really too close to it. The guys that were doing our countdown with the MACE missile, I could hear communications between the people that were counting down I'm going to call it a Titan. You can look it up. It's in October. They launched it in October 1959. And the guy said, we're going to have to hold the count because they're going to launch that Titan. And they must have thought we were farther away than we were. I mean, we were close to that thing. It's the loudest thing I ever heard in my life when they fired it. But I thought years later, if that thing had exploded, I mean, we would have been right at ground zero. So once they launched the Titan, then the guys picked up the countdown for the Mace. And I was sitting on top of this blockhouse because I could see down there on the Mace they had it on a launch pad near the water. But what I didn't know, there's an F-100 circulating around over Cocoa Beach, and I got to hurry with this is about the end. He was circulating around over there at Cocoa Beach, and his job was to follow that Mace in case something happened to it. I guess he was going to shoot it down. So he probably saw us sitting there on top of that blockhouse. So they fired the Mace, and as soon as the JATO bottle dropped off, that F-100, I bet he was no more than 50 feet off the ground. He came right over our head. I thought it was all over with. And he was going so fast that he had to swing out either right or left, I forget, or he would outrun the missile because that Mace missile looked like an airplane anyway. So anyway, that's a war story. And so I feel fortunate that I probably witnessed the beginning of missiles. And it was something else to see, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to see it. But that was old technology. But the technology that they were using probably are used in model airplanes today. No, it's not even that sophisticated. Well, thank you for watching these videos. I'm ending this at the post office in La Follette. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. We'll talk to you later.